Okay, it is time for the next review. Today we are reviewing the second book in the Vampire Academy series, Frostbite by Rochelle Mead. This is a young adult fantasy book and I have given it 3 stars, and I do apologise about my voice. For some reason I can't seem to be able to talk today, but we're going to just push through and get through this review. So, if you have not seen my reviews before, basically I split them into 2 sections. I have a non-spoiler section, which comes up first, and then second we do a spoiler version. In the non-spoiler version I give you 3 pros and 3 cons, spoiler-free, of what I thought of this book, and then we dive right into the spoiler version and I tell you everything I'm thinking about in a very much spoiler way. So if you do not want to be spoiled, don't worry, I will let you know when we're going into the spoiler section. First thing I want you to do is to ignore this cover, because I don't like this cover, honestly. There is a much better cover of Vampire Academy, of all of the series out there, that has the V and the A on the cover. And so when I read the next book in the series, which I think is Spirit Bound, I'll have to confirm that, but I think it's Spirit Bound, I will be ordering that book so that we don't have to keep looking at this cover. Nothing against the artist, I just prefer the other cover. Let's get right into this then with my 3 non-spoiler cons. First of all, this book is rather meandering. In the first half, there wasn't anything that I found to be too exciting about this book. It fits the brief of a YA fantasy, as well as it being a Vampire Academy book, but it just wasn't something that I enjoyed. There's not a lot of action in the first half of the book at all. It's more our protagonist going about her day-to-day life considering this is the second book in the series, I guess there are certain things I can say. Our protagonist, Rose, she attends Vampire Academy, which is an academy specifically for vampires. So, yeah, the first half is just them really being at school, and then they move away to a ski lodge vacation thing the whole school does in order to protect them from some attacks that have been going on away from what we're seeing in the book. And it was just rather meandering, so the action doesn't really begin until halfway through the book, and that was a con for me. My second con is that the protagonist, Rose Hathaway, makes some terrible decisions along the way that, though this extends the plot, understandably, I felt that some growth in her, now that this is book 2, and some maturity would have really improved the book. I'm strongly hoping for this in book 3. So Rose went through a lot of things in book 1, and if you'd like to check out my review of Vampire Academy Volume 1 Vampire Academy, you can certainly do that by checking out my playlist. She went through a lot of different things in the first book, and I really thought she would have matured. A lot of the decisions that she made in book 1 were very immature, but because of how the book ended, I thought she would become rather mature in the second one, and she didn't for a very long time, until way past the action packed sequences of the book, right at the conclusion. So I'm really hoping that Rochelle Mead doesn't have her going back to being immature again at the start of book 3, because I don't know, she's been through so many things. I just feel by now that she would be taking a much more mature route than she has been taking so far, and that she would think through her options a little more clearly. My third con is that there's not enough Adrian Ivashkov. What can I say? Okay, I am fangirling like crazy over here over Adrian for many reasons, and I will discuss that a little more when we get into the spoiler section, but Adrian is a new character that's been introduced to this book. In book 1, I spoke about how I like dark and brooding characters, and there is a dark and brooding character in book 1, Christian Ozera, who is still here in book 2, and he is much more front and center in book 2. However, this new character, Adrian Ivashkov, is a character that I'm absolutely falling in love with, but he did not have anywhere near enough screen time in this book, so I'm hoping he'll have more time in book 3. Let's get on to my 3 pros for this book, spoiler free once again. There is a magic system within this book, and there are actually a couple of different types of magic that have been revealed along the way. Not as much in book 1 as in book 2. We learn a little more about the different types of magic amongst different vampires and, yeah, what they can do. But Adrian Ivashkov has this ability to do something that I don't want to talk about till we get to the spoiler section, but he has this ability to do something that I've never read in a book before, and I read this book the first time probably not long after it came out, so this is only the second time I'm reading it, but even since having read this the first time and up to now, I have not seen this type of magic again since, and I just love the idea. So definitely that was a massive pro for me, as well as the other magic systems within the book. My second pro is that Rochelle's author decision regarding Mason towards the end of the book was appreciated from a writer and reader perspective. Mason is a character in the book, and something happens with him towards the end of the book, and I really appreciated that. If you want to know more, then we'll talk about that in the spoiler version, but to keep it light, yeah, she made a decision with him that I really, really got behind and appreciated that she did it and why she did it. My third spoiler-free pro is the character arc of Rose by the end of the book was done really well. And it makes sense considering what she went through to get there. And as I've already said, let's just hope she has the same level of maturity in book 3. There was a lot of redemption that occurs at the end of this book with certain characters and Rose's relationships with them. She was very immature with a lot of different characters in book 1, but this seems to be resolved, or if not resolved, at worst partially resolved. And so I really, really appreciate the way that this book ended, and I just hope that in book 3 Rochelle Mead continues along the way with that and doesn't have Rose taking like 5 steps backwards from the first page, which she kind of did with the start of this book from volume 1. And finally, because I'm going to give you 4 spoiler-free pros, Adrian Ivashkov and Christian Azera. As I said already, I loved Christian in book 1. I loved him even more in book 2. He had more airtime, and I just loved everything about him in this second book. And Adrian is the new character in the series, but I'm loving him even more than Christian. So if you like your dark and brooding guys, you won't be disappointed when it comes to Adrian Ivashkov and Christian Ozera. This book is a YA fantasy, and it reads as such. There are tropes that occur within this book that are typical for YA fantasy. And some of the things that YA fantasy writers like to do, I really appreciate. And then there are other things that I just don't really like, but I understand that it fits the brief of being YA. And so that's why for me, I settled on 3 stars for this book, which I settled on, I believe, the same rating for book 1. But that's where I'm going to leave it for the spoiler-free version. So if you are not going to be joining us for the spoiler version, I completely understand. If you do end up picking up this book and reading it, let me know what you think. And if you have any comments, thoughts, or questions, let me know in the comments below. Letting you go with peace, blessings, and so much love. And to you not joining us for the spoiler version, happy reading. I post videos every Wednesday and Sunday and reviews in between, and I'll see you very soon. Mwah! Thank you. Happy reading. Bye-bye. And for those of you who are sticking around with me for the spoiler version, we'll be right back in just a moment. Okay, spoiler version time. If you are still here, I am getting into the spoilers now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, ding, 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 mayday, mayday, because we're going into them right now. Now, there was a time when I went into the plot of a story and what it's all about, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to jump right into my thoughts and feelings on this. So let's start off with the first half of the book. There is not a lot that happens at all, as I did say in the spoiler-free version. Rose goes back to school. There's an attack. Strigoi have been attacking, and well, she goes off with with Dimitri to do something that I don't remember, some kind of thing that's going to help her with her guardian role. And when she gets there, the person she's meant to be seeing is dead because the Strigoi have attacked. News of this filters through the school, and the only way that the school can think to protect them, even though the school is very much protected, it has so many wards, they decide that they're going to go to a ski resort thing with everyone from the school and all the royal family, and they're just going to be very much protected and yada yada yada. Well, so much for that, because a handful of the students end up being able to run away from the ski lodge, so could have been more protected. But anyway, while at the ski lodge, Rose does meet Adrian Ivashkov, and as I said, I absolutely love this guy. I love my dark and brooding characters because I don't come across them enough in fantasy books, and I would love to come across them more and more. And I really appreciated Christian Ozera for that reason in book one. As I've already said, he's certainly a very dark and brooding character, but Adrian Ivashkov kind of takes it that step further. He is the kind of guy that just doesn't care for the rules, and he's a smoker and a drinker, and he doesn't care. He's going to live his life his own way. He is a Moroi, as is Christian Ozera. And for those of you who don't know, a Moroi is someone who is a part of a royal line for vampires. And there are many royals out there. In fact, there is a two-tier class system with vampires. The ultimate tier is the Moroi, the royal line. And then the second tier is Dampiers, Dampers, pronounce it however you want to, but those vampires are the Guardians or Guardians in training. So both Adrian and Christian are Moroi. Anyway, I really don't know a lot about Adrian's background. We meet his father without knowing we've met his father. I think Rose just calls him Silverhair or something like that, because there is a private function that she goes to with Lissa because she is a +1. Lissa being Rose's best friend, who is a vampire. She is a royal. She's the last of the Dragomir line, and Rose is training to become a guardian, to become Lissa's guardian specifically. That's what she wants to do. So while they're at this party, Lissa's talking to the other Moroi, because the Moroi are starting to think more along the lines of, we should fight as well as the Guardians, because up to this point, the way that things have always been is that it's the Guardians that fight. The Moroi don't fight. They are literally there to be protected. In fact, every Guardian grows up knowing the phrase, they come first. So it's never about the Moroi fighting, it's always about them being protected. But in this situation, the Moroi are talking more and more because a debate sparked at the ski resort when one Moroi jumped up and said, we should all be fighting as well. And so it becomes a topic of discussion. Lissa is very quick to talk to Grey Hair, Adrian's dad, who it turns out to be Adrian's dad, and telling him, because he doesn't agree with the side of things, he thinks that the Moroi should not be fighting. And she says, look, I completely understand where you're coming from, but I also understand where the others are coming from. And the way I see it, if you want to fight, then you should be allowed to. And if you don't want to fight, then you shouldn't have to. And there are things that I know that are coming up for Lissa. I have read the first 3 books, but I read them when they first came out, so a very long time ago. And there's one specific thing that I do remember, and that particular scene is setting her up for something that happens later on, and I believe it occurs in book 3, and I just think she handled it very, very well, considering that Lissa was very much a squeaky, kind of mousy kind of character in book 1, but in book 2 she's very much coming into her own, and I did appreciate that. So let's just jump into the action sequence, shall we? Basically, there is word of where the Strigoi are camping out. They're camping out in a place called Spokane, and Dimitri, who is the Guardian that's been single-handedly training Rose alongside the lessons that she's been having. A little bit of backtracking if you haven't read book 1. In book 1, Rose and Lissa have run away right at the beginning of the book. They'd already run away when we get to page 1, and then they come back to the school and they've missed a lot of things. So in order for Rose to be able to catch up, she has private lessons with this Guardian whose name is Dmitry Belikov, who she falls in love with, and thanks to a magic spell that some evil vampire has cast, they end up getting a bit hot and heavy, and then they realize, that they're under a spell, and there's a lot of discussion around the ethics of a student and her teacher being together and all this kind of stuff. And in book 2, Dimitri very much is taking a very hard line of, no, we can't be together, I'm your teacher, that's how it is. And I'm going to get to the Spokane thing in a minute, but we end up meeting Christian Ozera's aunt, because she's at the ski lodge. Her name is Tasha, I believe. I'm having to think there. I think it is Tasha. And Dimitri starts falling in love with Tasha, and Rose is very immature in the way that she's handling this, but eventually she says to him, look, I think it would be great if you do end up getting with her because she clearly loves you. And Tasha does not have a guardian, because apparently the way that it works is that not all Moroi are automatically given a guardian because there aren't enough to go around, and it comes down to, well, a lot of terrible things, like do you have enough money and things like that. It's really terrible. But anyway, so Tasha doesn't have one. She has offered Dimitri the job of being her guardian, and also it looks like they might have a child together, and Rose eventually is on board with this, saying, yeah, you should. It's a great opportunity for you. You can be a guardian and also have a kid at the same time. So one day they're having a chat, and Dimitri tells Rose that the Strigoi have been spotted in Spokane. Rose, there's someone who loves Rose in this series, and his name is Mason, and Mason almost successfully beds Rose. Let's just put it that way. I don't even know why they got to that point. I think Rose just wanted to get over Dimitri, so she thought, if I have a fling with someone, then I won't be with Dimitri, won't be thinking about Dimitri anymore. And so that nearly happened, but in the end she said no, and so it didn't go any further, and Mason's confused because he keeps flirting with her, and you can see there's not a lot of action going on here, but because she keeps flirting with him and saying yes and then no, yes then no, he says, I'm not mad at you, I'm just really confused because it seems like you want me and then you don't, and then you do, then you don't. I don't know what's going on anymore. And he has noticed that she has started taking her role to become a guardian much more seriously, and he's making that point with her, saying, you used to be a lot more fun and flirty and up for a good time, and nowadays you seem to be so much more serious than you ever were before. And this is absolutely inspired by Dimitri. I think that's very clear. Dimitri has instilled a lot of good things in her as far as her becoming a guardian. Rose's way of reacting to that is by basically spitting out what Dimitri has told her, that the Strigoi are holed up in Spokane. Mason really wants to fight. He's had enough of training and he wants to get out of the school, become a guardian, and start fighting the Strigoi, because to him it's kind of this fun thing that he's missing out on because he's training at the moment. So he ends up walking out on Rose after that, and he gathers up Rose's sworn enemy, who I'm calling Mia, but some people pronounce her as Maya, but I'm going to call her Mia. He rounds up Mia and another friend of his, Eddie, and they get Mia to use compulsion on the guards, and they escape. Those three escape to Spokane to try and directly attack the Strigoi. Very smart idea, don't you think? I mean, the immaturity of these kids. Seriously, it's ridiculous. But anyway, Rose finds out that they've gone missing, and she tries to find out what's going on, and eventually she tracks down the list of all of the guardians that were working on the night that she last saw Mason, and she finds out through one of them that he just let them pass. Yeah, she was shocked to hear this, and so was I. She basically said to him, what do you mean? And he said, well, they wanted to leave, so I let them leave. And he was commenting so nonchalantly, like he was commenting on the weather, where because of how much security was being offered to the vampires here at this ski resort, no one's allowed to leave. Like, no, it's almost like they're in lockdown. Which we kind of are. In reality, we kind of are in lockdown at the moment with the coronavirus. But anyway, they were in lockdown at the ski resort, so it doesn't make sense that he would let them out. But clearly, Mia used compulsion on this guard, and so that's how they got out. Once Rose finds this out, she wants to go and track them down so that she can rescue them before they get into trouble and bring them back, and she doesn't want to tell on them, so anyway, she ultimately goes to Christian, which I thought was a very interesting decision, because her other option could have been to just tell the Guardians that they've gone, and the Guardians could have gone out there, brought them back, punished them for sure for running away when they weren't supposed to, but then at least everyone would be safe. But Rose doesn't think that's the best idea and goes after them. Very, very immature decision in my mind. So she does go to Christian. I thought she should have gone to Adrian, honestly, out of the two, but I guess she doesn't know enough about him, so she goes to Christian, Lissa's boyfriend, thinking this would be okay. I'm having issues with this because Lissa and Christian have been in a relationship for a while now. They've consummated that relationship in this book as well. Yeah, that was a bit uncomfortable. Rose saw this through the spirit bond that they have with each other, and that was a bit uncomfortable. But anyway, so I don't know why she went after Lissa's boyfriend without discussing it with Lissa when she could have gone after Adrian, who really seems up for anything. But anyway, so she asks Christian to use compulsion on the guard so that they can get through, and Christian says, I'm not that good at it. And Rose, again, she doesn't care. She's already thinking 5 steps ahead of what she's going to do once she catches up to these 3 other students. It's such an immature journey. But anyway, she says, oh, look, it's fine. When Lissa does it, she speaks in a calm tone and she makes sure she has eye contact and all this, da-da-da-da. It doesn't work. Christian tries twice to do it on a guard and it's just not working. So what does Rose do? If she hasn't done enough already, she knocks the guard out. She doesn't kill him, but she hits him with a heavy blow so that she knocks him out. Really? This is just ridiculous. Anyway, so she and Christian end up traveling to Spokane and they end up at this plaza, that's what they call it, which is like a grand shopping centre, and they're looking around for Strigoi and they can't find any. Eventually they track down Mia, Eddie and Mason, who say the same thing. No, we haven't found them, and Rose says, look, let's go back to the ski resort because we're going to get in trouble and this is just ridiculous, let's just go. So they all decide, fine, we're going to go back. Great, let's get back to safety. But then Christian, being the dark brooding character that he is, says, why don't we just check out the tunnel? Because there's a tunnel in this plaza which is where the Strigoi are rumoured to be staying at that point. And the other kids have checked it out and they haven't seen any Strigoi there at all. They say, no, it just looks like a janitor area with all this janitorial stuff down there. There's no Strigoi at all. Anyway, so they end up going to the tunnel, which this is where the craziness begins. Once they get into the tunnel, they find all these letters written on a wall, like, for example, not specifically, but for example, an A, a P, an S, a T, an R, an L, whatever, and Rose ends up determining that they are the first letters in surnames of all the royal family members. Some of them have X's next to them because they are the ones that have been killed, and it is very easily determined by Rose and by readers as well that basically these Strigoi are trying to wipe out the royal line, either to wipe them out or to turn them Strigoi. Anyway, oh yeah, I haven't told you about Strigoi. Strigoi are basically the evil version of vampires. In Rochelle Mead's Vampire Academy universe, in this world, if you will, Dampiers, whatever you want to call them, and Moroi, they are nice vampires. They don't plan on killing humans. They have feeders who will just volunteer themselves for feeding because they get a high off it, but it's not like they go out of their way to try and kill humans or anything like that at all. They're really nice vampires, but Strigoi are just plain evil. So there you go. There's your good versus evil battle, and good versus evil trope in this book as well. So anyway, once Rose works out that these letters are all representing members of the royal line, they try to escape, but eventually they get trapped by these humans who drag them back into the tunnel and up to this basement room. And I mean, like, I say up because I kind of go up and down to get there. And these humans tie the 5 of them to chairs, and the leader walks in. He is a Strigoi, and he has his Strigoi friend, and the leader says to them, yeah, well, basically, we're going to be playing a little game here, which this is really the action starting to unfold from the halfway mark. We're going to play a little game here where basically most of you are going to die, but the 2 royal members, which are Christian and Mia is also royal, except I keep forgetting that she is, but anyway, she is. But the other 3 are Dampiers, whatever you want to call them. So the other three are guardians, but Mia and Christian are royals. He turns to the royals, this leader guy, and he says, one of you is going to survive, but the rest are going to die. What we're going to do with this game is one of you is going to volunteer to drink from one of the others, one of the guardian, the D vampires, and by so doing, you will turn into Strigoi and you will get to live with us while the rest of you are going to die. Needless to say, none of the royals budge. They both say, no, we're not doing this, but after a couple of days without having any blood, they're not really able to survive. They're really struggling. Finally, Christian says, you know what, that's it, I'm going to do it. What you need to know is that Christian's a fire starter. He has the ability to summon fire at a moment's notice. Mia has the ability to summon water at a moment's notice. Now, from what I'm understanding, each royal, because it's a complex system, each royal seems to have one ability or another of the elements. Although with Vasilisa, it's more that she has spirit, which is very much an unknown element. So Christian ends up getting up, claiming that he's going to drink from Rose. The leader is not in the room at this point, it's just the other humans, so they release him so that he can go and drink from Rose. He makes out like he's drinking from her when he's not actually doing that. And while everyone else is distracted thinking that's what he's doing, what he's actually doing is he's using his fire to melt the binds that are tying Rose down and eventually melts them, and then there's a big battle that ensues. Ultimately, what happens is that they get to the exit point of this place that they're being held at, and they open the door and there is sunlight streaming in through the door, and Strigoi cannot stand to be in sunlight. Bless them. Yet the royals can. This is kind of confusing for me, but let's keep moving. And a battle between Rose and... between Rose and the leader, the Strigoi leader and his friend ensues, and ultimately Mia ends up using her water powers to bind the leader, and then Rose stakes the leader, but not before the leader, this is going to be graphic, so be warned, not before the leader grabs Mason and twists his neck and kills Mason. So Mason's now dead, and I said in my prose about this book that I appreciated what Rochelle Mead did with the character of Mason, and I meant his death. I appreciated the death because I felt like there needed to be a consequence. The consequence of the first book was that the girl whose name starts with N, Natalia, Natasha, something like that, Natalie, something like that, becomes a Strigoi. So that is a consequence of that book. The consequence in this book is that Mason is killed. And I do appreciate that, and I can say for sure, since I have read book 3, don't remember everything about it, but remember enough to know that he is dead. He's not coming back alive. And I appreciate that because there needed to be a consequence in this book somewhere. Not everyone could go scot-free, so I really did appreciate that. So eventually, Rose stakes the leader Strigoi guy, and finally the Guardians find them and everyone's rescued, and Rose ended up, I think, killing 2 or 3 Strigoi in the battle sequence, and therefore she got some Mole Ninja or Molnia, it's pronounced in different ways, marks on the back of her neck, because every time you kill a Strigoi you receive a mark, just like a brandishing mark to note how many Strigoi you have killed. This is meant to be a really good thing. It's very much respected amongst the world of vampires that are not Strigoi, clearly. So that's a good thing, and she's given a lot of praise, and yeah, people really respect her for what she was able to do. But here's Rose feeling rather, still shocked about the death of Mason, and she regrets, not being able to spend more time with him before he died, which I completely understand. I very quickly want to jump back to the magic system that I appreciated the most out of this book, and that is a magical ability that Adrian Ivashkov has. Now, I know that I've said I love the character of Adrian Ivashkov, but I don't love this magic system just because it comes from Adrian. I actually love it because of what it does. He has the ability to what I'm going to call dream jump. I think they call it dream magic in the book, but I'm just going to call it dream jumping, where he gets to somehow magically appear in other people's dreams. And so he appears in, while the five are being held captive, obviously they're there for a number of days, and so they are going to sleep every now and again. And every time Rose falls asleep, she has a dream, and while she's dreaming, Adrian is there, and he's asking her questions like, where are you? We want to find you, all this kind of stuff. It did happen once prior to Rose being captured while she was at the ski lodge, but Rose was kind of questioning, was it just a dream or what? But now by this stage she's worked out that no, this is actually really Christian, and I found that to be a really great magic system idea. I loved it. So I'm pretty sure they'll keep that magic system going in book 3, and I'm really looking forward to reading that in book 3. All in all, I thought that this book was okay, and it deserved the 3 stars that it got. I don't think it is a fantastic book by any means. I do think that if the first half had been condensed down to just 2 chapters, that I would have given it a higher rating, because the second half of this book is so much better than the first half of the book. The second half of the book is a great half of the book. The first half of the book is just not good for me at all. I just found it to be way too meandering. I appreciated the moments with Adrian Ivashkov. I appreciated the moments with Christian, but I just did not appreciate how meandering it is. All in all, it was okay though, and it's definitely getting me not hyped up, but I was not going to put the 3rd book into my April TBR, but spoiler, I am going to now put it into my April TBR because I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from here with the dream jumping magic. Very much inspired by that, so we will see how we go. And that is where I am going to leave it for this book, Frostbite, Vampire Academy Volume 2 by Rochelle Mead. It is a YA fantasy book that I've given 3 stars. Letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Mwah. Thank you so much for watching. I post videos every Wednesday and Sunday. Happy reading, sorry. And I'll see you next time. Mwah. Bye guys. Bye.